So I'm going to actually ask members of the VFW to come forward and introduce themselves, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Gilchrist.
Junior Vice Commander of Post 916.
I'm Ron Gilchrist. I'm Post Service Officer, VFW Post 916. Sir.
I'm Jim Bowen, just here as a guest.
Chief Warrant Officer.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and lead us, Chief.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next item is approval of minutes. We have approval of the May 20th, 2019 executive session meeting minutes.
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So motion to approve the May 31st, 2019 work session meeting minutes.
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the May 31st, 2019 executive session meeting minutes?
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the June 3rd, 2019 regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. And finally, is there a motion to approve the June 5th, 2019 executive session meeting minutes?
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 5-0. For our announcements, I have a proclamation for Chief Warrant Officer James B. Bowen, and several of us were fortunate enough to go to Congressman Langevin's office for a ceremony honoring him. So I'm going to go down and ask him to join me for the reading of the proclamation. Proclamation recognizing Chief Warrant Officer 2 James P. Bowen, United States Army, retired. Whereas Chief Warrant Officer James Bowen, a born and raised Rhode Islander, grew up in East Greenwich, was educated at the University of Rhode Island, and currently resides with his wife Donna here in Narragansett after a successful career as a veterinarian. And whereas Chief Warrant Officer James Bowen enlisted in the Army in 1968 and served his country with unwavering valor during the Vietnam War. And whereas Chief Warrant Officer James Bowen repeatedly distinguished himself during intense combat operations in an AH-1G Cobra helicopter, gunner, co-pilot, pilot and aircraft commander under extraordinarily hostile conditions. And whereas Chief Warrant Officer James Bowen, through repeated engagements with the enemy and in support of American troops and the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, earned numerous military decorations in recognition of his heroism and gallantry in action. And whereas Chief Warrant Officer James Bowen only recently received those decorations, including the Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross and Double Bronze Oak Leaf Cluster, Bronze Star, Air Medal and Bronze Oak Leaf Cluster, Army Commendation Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Vietnam Service Medal with triple bronze stars, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Ribbon, Expert Badge and Rifle Bar, Sharpshooter Badge, Automatic Rifle Bar, Pistol Bar, and Army Aviator Basic Badge. Now we, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Narragansett, do hereby extend our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Chief Warrant Officer James B. Bowen for his distinguished military service with the United States Army, and highly commend him for his courageous actions and leadership in his service to the United States of America. item is the consent agenda. Is there any item that anyone would like pulled from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull number 2.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number 2?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item number 2 is a motion to award the bid for the master water meter replacement project to the lowest bidder, Felsch Engineering Incorporated, in the amount of $7,900. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Discussion. Go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to bring this one forward. I had a few questions about the details on this water meter. And I know I heard a little bit from the community as well. I was a little bit concerned about some of the specifics, but I'm looking for a little bit of clarity on it. John, would you be able to come up and answer a few questions? Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it. So reading this summary, my understanding is that, so this is at Fisherman's Memorial. So does this meter basically aggregate all the individual water meters at the campground?
No, this is the main water meter, meter for water service. John, sorry about that. This is the primary water service meter from our water system. We have a water main that comes by, there's a 6-inch line that comes in, and this is the meter that's on that 6-inch line, and then it goes into the park. I believe there's a second smaller 2-inch meter on the backside of the park, but there's only 2 meters to the park.
Okay, so this meter is measuring water going into the park.
Exactly, for us to bill to the state for their water use.
Okay, great. And then one of the questions that has come up during the workshop in April, there was a consultant on site who was telling us about some newer water meters that Suez is trying to integrate in, which are wireless, and they basically transfer data in real time back to a central application where it can be monitored. Would this water meter use that technology?
That's not what this meter is. We have a wireless reading where we would go by and we have a wireless handheld meter so we can read the meter that way, but it's not the integrated system that's automated and automatic.
Okay, so this is the same technology that they use for residential.
Yeah, the meter, right now, the meter doesn't record low flows accurately, so we want to be able to bill them for all their water use, and that's why we're replacing the meter.
Great, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, does anyone else have any questions, comments? All right, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to go? Patrick? Oh, come forward. Come forward.
Good evening, and thank you for opening this up to the public to be able to speak. My name is Carolyn Petroselli, and I live on Rockland Street. This discussion here is a little different than what I heard when I listened to that workshop. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring up anything that was discussed at that, because I'm concerned about the wireless meters they're talking about that are going to be placed, or at least what this gentleman from Suez had mentioned, that they were going to be placing on our homes that could be read remotely, not the ones that where you drive down the street that have a range of, like, from what Suez said, 600 feet. Is this an appropriate time to bring up or is that discussion, is that something that we are planning on putting into homes? And are we going to know about that, or is it going to be done without our knowledge?
Sean or John, could you speak to that? I think it is 2 separate issues, but I don't want to speak on it.
Right.
I believe what you just clarified, it's not that technology.
Okay. So that workshop, I was waiting for that, whatever was coming of that workshop, to be something that was going to be put on the agenda so that it could be open for discussion. Will there be notice of that, or is that something that, what I just don't want to have happen is that these meters, these remote meters that are going to be emitting the RF radiation and are going to be attached to our homes are going to be placed on our homes like National Grid has done without letting us know. and then you find out later, and then you try to opt out. And in some cases you're able to, other cases you're not. So I wondered if this is something we're going to be learning about, or are we going to find them on our homes one day?
Well, we would have to, we would have to come to us and vote on it, but again, I'll turn to Sean, but.
If you want to come over, I'll give you my card, and I'll do some more and forth and get back to you.
All right.
But
Because
that's not being discussed today.
But the workshop you're referring to is, I keep thinking of the one about the increase in rates, but I think you're talking about a different issue. But
It was the April 24th workshop, and it was one in which the gentleman was saying they will be able to read your or look at what a person's water usage is 24/7 at any given moment, and they were talking about the rates, the assessment that they were going to add on to, and I think you know what I'm talking about, was $116 a year for 2 years were going to be assessed, or they could have just built it into the rates, which would have then essentially kept the rates up and not gone back down. That's what, when I saw that, I said, are we going to have an opportunity to speak to this? Because I have prepared some comments and things, but if this is not the right time, I'll hold off, I'll wait until it
But
is.
that would be a separate agenda item.
That is, okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Patrick. All right, if there's no one else, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item number 10 is a motion to approve the proposal for professional engineering services related to the design of sidewalks on Rodman Street from Boone Street to Ocean Road with Beta Group Incorporated in the total amount of $18,300.
So moved.
Discussion, so this item comes from the Public Works Department, and it is for a limited stretch of road fixing the sidewalks with any questions or comments about it. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Number 11 is a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, specifically adding new text regulating the medical use of marijuana.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, so we had a public hearing on this item. Is there any comments from the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Number 12 is a motion to approve the request from the Parks and Recreation Department for the ability to rent the Clark Center at 170 Clark Road on weekends and holidays with a liquor liability option for $150 for family outings, organizations, and special events subject to state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, so this is on the part of the Parks and Rec Department, an attempt to increase perhaps some of the rental options for people who want to use that facility, and so this would allow them essentially to add the ability to have to serve alcohol at those events. Are there any questions or comments on this item? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion approved 5-0. 13 is a motion to approve the request from Rotary Club of Wakefield, Rhode Island to conduct a pumpkin plunge fundraiser at the Town Beach on Sunday, October 20th, 2019 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. subject to approval of state and local regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So it might still, the water might still be warm in October for a plunge, but anyway, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item 14 is a motion to award the bid for architectural engineering services Maury Lungin's Memorial Library renovation project to Secotio and Associates Architects in the amount of $15,050 for the building and building systems evaluation report. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? All right, well, then we'll move on to number 15. A motion to award the bid for the William C. O'Neill Bike Path segment 4A to the lowest bidder, Cardi Corporation, in the amount of $521,202.35.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So this has been, I think it's important for, if we can get a little summary on this, I'll make a few comments. The bike path project's been in works for a while. Dave and Rosemary Smith have been very, very involved in this, and so thank you for their efforts. I think the big thing here is we just want to emphasize, although that's a big ticket item, it should be reimbursed, it's reimbursable via grant money. So I'm going to turn over to you, Sean, for a quick summary.
Council President, I think Michael will be the best person to speak in this. He's been heavily involved in this from the beginning.
Yes, Mr. President, you're correct on that. The town received a grant under the Green Economies Bond, which was issued to us, I think it was in 2017, in order to do this construction. The amount that you see before you is well within the grant amount, so there will be no local funding necessary to build this section of the bike path.
And where will this end? What's the terminus of this particular portion? I think that's an important point.
I'm sorry I didn't put a picture up on the screen for you. It starts at the Mumford Road crossing where the bike path currently ends, crosses the street, goes to Riverside Drive, crosses Riverside Drive onto the elementary school property, then wraps around the back perimeter of the elementary school, and then turns along the eastern border, runs along the edge of the soccer field, and ends in the community center parking lot.
And then as this work is done, there'll be a grant reimbursement process.
That's correct.
For this dollar amount. All right, any comments or questions from the council? Any comments or questions from the public? Stanley.
I just want to commend all those involved in getting a project done without money from the taxpayers of Narragansett. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0.
Congratulations, Rosemary. You guys did a great job.
Item 16 is a motion to approve the contractual agreement between the town of Narragansett and Anthony Wojcik to perform electrical inspections for the building official's office from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Any comments or questions from the council? All right, anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. And a motion to approve the contractual agreement between the town of Narragansett and James Harris to perform plumbing and mechanical inspections for the building official's office from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So these plumbing and mechanical and electrical agreements are to supplement, or to help and supplement and support the building official's office. So any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. I'm going to ask the steno to come up. We still have 10 minutes till the public hearing, but at least she can start getting set. And we're going to move on to our open forum because at 8 p.m. is when we noticed our hearing. So our open forum, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And please conduct yourself in an orderly, respectful fashion. And when we get to 8 o'clock, we will then have to go to the hearing and then come back to the public forum, public comment, open forum. Would anyone like to speak? Yes, Mr. DeStefano.
Thank you. I wrote a letter to the editor, to the Narragansett Times and the South County Independent. It's called The Dark Days for Narragansett. The cultural lights were dimmed over Narragansett on the night of June 3rd, excuse me, when 3 council members, led by the council president, Matthew Mannix, decided to deeply slash the library budget. This came after the same group of 3 chose to ignore the wishes of the 68% who voted to approve a referendum to purchase the former Belmont building and make it into a new and improved Narragansett library. These same 3 council members, Matthew Mannix, Jill Lawler, and Richard Lehman, however, defied the referendum and the wishes of the people and decided to put the Belmont building, which was to be our new library, up for sale. The results of their actions, if not successfully challenged, are many, including that our town will have to reduce both library staff and normal library hours. A sad situation given that our town and our library have grown and prospered over the years. Another consequence is that we will no longer qualify for state funding because these same 3 council members have decided not to level fund the library, thus losing our state grant. Excuse me again. If I were not already a Narragansett resident, I would have to seriously consider how moving to a town that doesn't value a library will affect my family. Pro-library councilmen Jesse Pugh and Patrick Murray have tried gallantly to save our library and to enhance the lives of the people of Narragansett. For us saddened Narragansett residents, we have to look to 2020 when a new council will be chosen, which will support community, family, and cultural values in order to right this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arlington, Wood Hill Road. You're always saying the numbers don't lie. Right, numbers don't lie, except when the numbers themselves are the lies. Like the 181,000 plus listed in the budget on page 35 for revenues from the state to the library. It's like my saying, I have this lottery ticket here and I assume I'm going to win, so I'm going to spend the money before the numbers are even drawn. I have news for you. I have a better chance of winning millions in the lottery than you have of getting the 181,000 plus from the state. You've been told over and over again that the state will only contribute if you level fund the library. Cutting the library budget by $441,000 is not level funding. More lies being the numbers. On page 29, the budget shows a total of more than $2.8 million for capital projects for 2019 for the library. This budget was first proposed in February and revised in May, both dates long after you put the building up for sale. How dare you misrepresent this as a line item figure attributed to the library? It is a lie to the town's residents and will be a lie to the state when you submit this budget. I'm sure we would all forgive you this lie if you turn the Belmont building back over to the library. Speaking of numbers, Mr. Leamer is always touting that 4% cap mandated by the state. The library only requested level funding. That's a 0% increase. Last time I checked, 0% was less than 4%. So stop insinuating that the library is one of the reasons the town cannot afford to maintain its roads. I've heard Mr. Manick say that we library supporters are an angry mob that is overburdening the town council with library issues and therefore preventing it from tackling other important issues here in town. He states that when he was outvoted on an issue, he just accepted his defeat and moved on, and so should the library supporters. There is a big difference between moving on when one's opinion was outvoted in a group of 5 than when 67.9% majority, 5,109 residents voted to approve the bond issue for a new library, only to have 3 people disregard those votes and the will of the people. Courageous people fight to undo an injustice. They don't roll over and die. So I guess you'll keep seeing our faces until you right the wrong you have done. One last thing. It seems you like to call the library a town department when it's convenient, and it's not a department when it fits your needs. An incident occurred last week that brought to mind the Christmas movie Miracle on 34th Street. Do you remember the story? Kris Kringle's lawyer was trying to prove that Santa Claus really existed, so he asked the judge if the United States Post Office was a reliable source to confirm Santa's existence. When the judge agreed, thousands of letters were delivered to the defendant in the courtroom. So I ask you, is the telephone company a reliable source? Right here, under the town of Narragansett, The telephone company lists the library with all the other departments in the town, right above Parks and Recreation and the police departments. Thank you.
God forgive me for making my neighbors upset. But it all started with my mother's action. She never bought me any new pants, new shoes, new shirts. Nothing ever. Never had a new thing. Never went to a store, never bought a new thing. That influenced me for the rest of my life. And today, I can say I've never bought a new car in my life. Never even considered buying a new car. I always try to fix and make do with what I had. And I've done that for, I think, ever since I was 12 years old, fixing my bicycle. I didn't get a new bike. I found a bike somewhere and fixed it. And that's why I was upset when I didn't see item 14 looked at, because I thought that was an issue where we were going to look at maybe a possibility of fixing the existing library building. At least look at it. We should at least give it a serious look to see what the numbers are, to see if that's a reasonable choice. At least investigate it. If those who want a new library, certainly if you just drive a little bit up north, to North Kingston, and have a new library and look over the water. What I value in our library is the people. The people are so good there. The library staff. And the programs they have. It is really, that's what I treasure. I don't treasure a building. A building is just there. It's it's a monument. I don't want to build a monument. I want to keep the staff doing what they're doing as they're doing. And maybe, hopefully, we could probably put 3 additions to the existing library, get 3 rooms in there, so they can conduct their activities in 3 separate rooms in the existing library without spending millions. You know, I think three classroom type buildings probably would only cost maybe $200 or $300 each, maybe $1 million, maybe $2 million bucks we can add on to the existing library, and it could do the work we need to do here. And every time I go there, so happy to go in and see it. For me not to go into the existing library would actually be a negative feeling after all these years working in that building and doing what I want to do. And I think that's a possibility that should be looked at more closely. And I hope we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to go now? He'll be the last. Okay, go ahead. This will be the last speaker before the public hearing. Come on up.
Glory Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. Well, Stanley just pointed out what a wonderful staff we have in the library. So let me just point out, since the town council has not given pensions to the library employees, 3 masters in library science employees have left in the past year and a half. We just lost our children's librarian. The state, OLS, requires the library to have a master's in library science as a children's librarian. Who, in their right mind, would want to come to work in Narragansett without pension at a lower salary with one of the lower paying libraries, and in a town where the town council, the present town council, 3 of them, do not support a library, the center of a community. No one, no person with a master's in library science, again in their right mind, would apply to come and work here. And now we do not have a children's librarian with a master's in library science as required by the state. Thank you for your work against the library. You should be ashamed of yourself.
It's 8 o'clock. We are going to move to our public hearing. It's a motion to reconvene a public hearing to consider rezoning 4 properties to comply with designations assigned in the 2017 Narragansett Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map. Said properties being Plat NR Lot 146-G, Plat P Lot 292, Lot 293, and Plat L Lot 282. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, to reconvene the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved 5-0. So the reason this is back is that we had 6 properties that were up for zone changes several weeks ago, and there was opposition to these 4 in the public hearings. So we wanted the town clerk checked with the schedules of people who were interested in this, were attorneys for some of the applicants. So that's why it is on this evening. This was the date that worked for that. So we're going to go through, I'm going to have Mr. DeLuca talk through them, but then I'm going to separate the conversation for each lot. So we're going to go through one by one, and then close the hearing for each of them if we feel we're ready to vote. All right, Mr. DeLuca, if you want to summarize for us, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. And as you mentioned, this is a reconvene of a hearing that we've already opened. So I presented all the material I'm going to show you tonight already. It's on the record. But I want to give you a short summarization of the properties that are still outstanding, and point out the designation as set forth in the land use map and the zoning that was proposed. So here we are, just reminding you that we are trying to carry out the very first and most important action in the comprehensive plan, land use goal LU1, which states that we should make local land use decisions in an open and transparent environment based on sound planning principles and with most accurate data available. Policy 1.1 states that we should ensure the comprehensive plan reflects the town's vision of its future and use it to guide land use decisions and development of local regulations and policies. Very importantly, the 2 sub-policies state that we should make all land use decisions in accordance with the future land use map, and that we should amend zoning and subdivision regulations, which includes zoning map, to be consistent with the future land use map and intent of the plan. These are the 4 lots that are remaining to be acted upon. The second column there indicates the plat and lot numbers. NR 146G, which is up on Boston Neck Road. NR is the plat, I'm speaking in shorthand, excuse me. Plat NR, lot 146G. Plat P, lot 292 on Westmoreland Street. Right next to it, Plat P, lot 293. And then down on the south end at 1156 Point Judith Road, Plat L, lot 282. We are suggesting that the existing zoning be changed from R10 to BB for the first of those, from R40 to IA for the second, same for the third, and from a combination of R10 and BA to all BA for the last one. And I'll show them. We'll go over each of those right now. So here's lot 146G. It's directly adjacent to the Shell station at the north end. It is zoned pardon me. Dan, why don't you just advance it for me? Get it to the land use map, please. Next one. So the land use map shows lot 146G as being designated as a commercial lot. Next. This is the advertisement from one of the newspaper that indicates that we want to rezone it from current R10 residential to BB general business. As you can see, the other lots in the vicinity are all zoned commercial, the gray. This lot down here on the southeastern quadrant was recently rezoned so it would fit in with all of those. Next in. So here we are, Plat P. We've got lots 292 and 293. These are directly across the street from the tri-party sewage treatment plant, adjacent to the condominium development and adjacent to the highway garage. Next. This is the land use map, a close-up showing that we have shaded them gray so that they would be redesignated industrial. Next. And then here are the advertisements in one of the newspapers that indicate that they would be rezoned from R40, which is 1 acre residential, to IA, limited industrial. Next. Last one, Plat L, lot 282 at the south end. You'll remember that Iggy's is down here. This is on Carey's over here, so it's right at that intersection. This lot is unique because it has a zoning line that bisects it. Next. So there's the current zoning line, and you can see that part of the lot is zoned residential, part of it is zoned limited, in a limited business PA. Next. And this is the land use map, I should have shown this first, that indicates that the entire area was designated as a commercial, which is red. So that summarizes our presentation. Just reminding the council that the planning board reviewed these in November of last year, along with the other ones that you've already seen, and recommended approval for these 4 lots as designated. I'll take any questions you might have.
Could you just, as we go through each of them, so go back and put up the first one, which is going to be NR lot 146G, so it's up there during the discussion.
You want
So
to give them one at a time?
We're going to do them one at a time.
Okay. Step away and come back when you need.
So let's have that up so people are aware of where we're starting. And they're in that order on the agenda, so. And Mr. Marcella is here if people have questions. So he focuses on, is our attorney for planning and zoning. All right, so before, we've opened the public hearing. Any comments from the council before I go to the public hearing?
Yeah, I got a question for Steve. Steve, is that lot, proposed commercial lot, border the Bonnet Shores Fire District?
I believe it's in the fire district.
It is in the fire district? Yes. Okay, so I have a legal question. Can Councilman Manning vote on this? I have to abstain because I'm involved financially with that property, so I'm abstaining tonight. But can Councilman Manning vote either way on this property because he's a paid clerk for the fire district? Isn't there a financial interest there?
I don't believe so. I mean, the question's coming out of left field, Councilman Murray, and you could have told me this ahead of time, to be perfectly honest. However, him being a clerk of the fire district, I don't believe is an ethical conflict.
Paid clerk. I'm a paid consultant for that lot, and I can't vote. If he's a paid consultant,
But
the
you
land trust-
I believe you have a specific legal, monetary interest in the property where.
well, I think
his interest is
Councilman
not
Manning
specific.
has a specific interest in the Bonnet Shores Fire District.
But I'm not getting any money out of it.
Well, you're a paid consultant.
Right, but I'm not going to get it. Whichever way this goes doesn't make me
I know, but you have a
better off
personal
for-
interest in this property.
We all have personal interests in
Well,
things.
you know
I mean-
what, Matt? You know what I'm talking about.
Well, no, actually, I don't know what the problem is.
Well, it's the same thing with the real estate office across the street, you know, that's, 2 properties away. You tried to shut them down and put them out of business. They took a crappy party house and turned it into a nice, quiet business, low impact, a lot lower impact than what was there before, and that, I believe is that lawsuit still
So
pending?
Patrick, are you abstaining or recusing of it?
Is that, I'm asking if you're abstaining.
I'm not. Are
You're
you?
not, okay.
Are
I
you?
am abstaining.
You're abstaining or are you recusing?
I'm recusing, abstaining, whatever you want.
Well, they're two very different things.
Recusing.
Well, I'm asking the question.
And I'm answering your question.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a,
Yeah.
is that okay if I speak?
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, I have a, question for the, I guess for Steve, or Mark, actually. This isn't specific to these properties, it's more of a general question about how this relates to the charter. So, the comprehensive plan is referenced throughout the charter, the town charter, and the idea that it serves as a guideline for the way that we should vote, to adhere to the comprehensive plan. So my question is, if you vote against rezoning this, are you coming close to violating what's written in the charter?
Not necessarily. What state law, basically, the comprehensive plan is reviewed what used to be every 10 years and now every 5 years. State law requires that once the town gets their comprehensive plan, votes on it, and the state approves it, then the town is then required to have the zoning in compliance with the comprehensive plan. And that's essentially what's happening today, is the comprehensive plan that these lots were designated as either industrial or residential, 2017, and now the planning department's getting around to making sure that the comprehensive plan and zoning are in coordination with each other. However, it would be ultimately my opinion that if the town council does not approve the zone change, then I would direct the planning department to amend the comprehensive plan. You're allowed to amend the comprehensive plan 4 times a year. So the state has basically taken into account the fact that there will be periodic amendments. So if the council does or does not vote to approve any of these lots, I would then direct Mike to come forward with an amendment to the comprehensive plan to make sure our plan and our zoning matched each other.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go to the public. So this is a public hearing, so you're going to be sworn in by my solicitor. But before that, if any other council members want to comment, go ahead, Mr. Lima.
So at one of the hearings that we had, somebody came up and spoke that lives in those condos. And one of the issues I have is that person came and spoke on a drainage issue. There's a lot of water that flows from this piece of property into those condos. Now, we approve this, doesn't resolve the water issue. The water issue is there, and who knows where it'll go from there. I'm a firm believer that before I'm going to approve anything, we're going to make sure that whatever this property does to abutting neighborhoods or abutting neighbors, that it needs to be resolved. You just can't have a piece of property with water running or anything else running into another neighbor's property and think that you're just going to be able to do that and not take care of it. So for me, I am not approving this until we get that water issue resolved. Now, whatever they have to do it, do it. I don't know if they're going to have to put a little retaining pond back there or whatever they're going to have to do to resolve it. But right now, the water flows into those condos. And I don't think it's fair to those people that that's going on. So I'm thinking about, let's get that resolved. Then once that's resolved, then we'll move to the next step. So that's how I feel about this piece of property. Thank you.
I'd like to address that. Under the state and town ordinances and laws, if you improve that property, then you take care of the drainage issue. I mean, right now, as as it stands, it's a civil matter between the two, just like Boone Street, it's a civil matter between the two property owners, okay? If that property, whatever it is, it's gonna be residential, commercial, once they come up with a plan, under the new guidelines, they have to come up with a stormwater plan. So to put the onus on the property owner now is kind of putting the cart before the horse. I mean, you're gonna, there's a property rights issue, that's a civil action, not a town mandate. If you want to get a town mandate, you can come up with an agenda item and we can vote on it and make it a town mandate. But that's the way it works.
Is the applicant here before we go to, is the applicant, would you like to speak?
I'd like to address, excuse me,
Wait, you did.
would you please state your name and address?
Antonio Salvatore, 122 North River Drive, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
Antonio, can you please raise your hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Just keep your comments to me.
Okay. Concerning the storm, the drainage issue, those condos are, I feel for the people that live back there, obviously. But we've made no alterations to that property other than cut some brush. Those condos, they've been there a long time, and they're tucked in a gully. Obviously, if something was done to that property in the future, if that property was developed in the future, we would be obligated to address the drainage issue. If indeed that is the problem. But I don't really think you know if that's the problem. I'm sure it could be part of the problem, but not the whole problem.
Thank you.
I have one other thing to say. When the council voted to expand the use of the Shell station, reduce their setbacks, change the traffic flow there. That's what it lends itself to.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Richard, and then the woman behind him.
My name is Richard Van Bush.
Your address, Richard?
Thank you.
No, Richard, what is your address?
I can see it up there. Let's use 55 Osceola.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely. I opposed this last time. I thought there was a definitive no on this particular proposal, even though I hate to argue against the person behind me. But in my view, this always was a lousy business decision. That property is useless for what it is zoned as, and if a person made a bad purchase, that is just a poor business action. We do not have to salvage every poor business decision in Narragansett. And as I said before, I'm a resident there. I bike by it every day, once or twice a day, frequently walk by it, and by crossing myself, mightily trying to use Wampum Road to access Boston Neck Road. This is an unsafe area and this property has been vacant because it deserves to be vacant. Someone made a lousy business decision. The last time we were threatened, we'll keep it residential. The old cry, let's have some affordable housing. That always supposedly quells any opposition. It hasn't quelled my opposition. This property, made into any business, is just plain unsafe for me and for this community. And I feel sorry for the person who made the lousy business decision. But don't take it out on me because you made a huge error.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Hanley. I live at 1024 Boston Neck Road, directly across from the property.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will. I've heard a lot of things tonight, and I've heard a lot of rumors, but I live in the condos, the 4 condos that are directly across from this property. And I'm speaking for my condo, Bonnet Condominium, and also for the other 11 condos, Bonnet Shores Condominium. Boston Neck Road is heavily, heavily traveled. And I'm talking about wintertime and summertime. Summertime, sometimes it's impossible to get out of your driveway. It's not safe. I have actually gotten out of my car and gone into the street to ask if I could get out of my driveway. That's now. And this has been going on. I've been living there 15 years. The people who live in the Bonnet Shores condominium, there's 11 condos there, and they have difficulty getting out of their driveway. If we add anything there, anything, it's going to be a catastrophe. It is not safe. Whatever does go on that property has to come in and go out, which it will make it more complicated, like the gas station next door. And I think it's going to be a very detrimental thing to Boston Neck Road. I really do. We have so many businesses and so many places that people are going in and out and in and out. But if you can't get out of your own driveway, and this happened to me this past Sunday, I had to get out of my car to wave to the people to please let me go. It's a big problem. So I'd like you to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goonan.
Good evening. My name is John Goonan. I do not live in a commercial property.
Excuse me, John. Would you state your address, please?
I live at 6 Bonnet Shores.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
As indicated in the introduction, everything was grouped together here as commercial property. That is my property, right behind the gas station and next to the property in question. That is my property. That's where I am. And currently, I use facilities further up on the Boston Neck Road, and come the summertime, and even at this time of the year, you can spend 10, 15 minutes trying to get out of a driveway across 2 lanes of traffic. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes just to get into the near lane. It's absurd the amount of traffic that's there already. On my property, I butt right against their property, and it has changed tremendously in the past 2 months with the removal of all the brush and the trees, except for the tree that's about to fall on my house. It's absurd to turn that into a commercial property when we can't use the driveways up and down the avenue already. You probably need at least 2 more traffic lights out there between Bonnet Shores Road and up at the end of the street. There's just too much traffic there. These people that walk along there can't get across the street. It's ridiculous now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Montequilla.
talked about how the corner property just got rezoned last year from the party house. And the difference with that was that we knew what was going there, that it was going to be a quiet business. We already knew it was going to be a real estate company. My concern, I guess I have a question first. What is the difference between, why is that being considered zoned for business, for BB, and not BA, which would be a limited business instead of a general business, is my first question. Oh, I guess you could answer it now.
That's what the applicant chose.
Because it would seem to me that a limited business would be a little more serene. I don't know about these things, but it seems to me.
BA is lighter than BB.
Exactly.
I thought that the applicant chose that. If that's not true, then it was also just from the comp planning process that we went through 2 years ago.
And my other concern is, I happen to be the first condo behind that lot, and there is a lot of moisture. And so I do realize that even if it got rezoned, anyone who was going to put something on there would have to take care of it. But it's much different having something there that has grassy surface instead of some commercial business that's going to be full of concrete. And that water will right now the water can be absorbed into the trees and the plants, but I can't even imagine if it were paved, what would happen to our whole condominium unit. We do have water drainage from that lot. So, I guess that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Mrs. Ford.
My name is Carol Fortin, 10 Cross Road.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
If we look at, I'm definitely opposed of changing this to commercial. If you look at the area, you'll notice it's all green. We have the gentleman that just spoke about his piece of property abutting this commercial piece of land. You have condos in the back. You have the church. And then if you look at all the surrounding, we have family homes. And I am opposed to changing my neighborhood to start becoming a commercial venue. What would happen if somebody decided to go to St. Thomas More Church and offer them a nice big chunk of change for St. Veronica's Church? Now, would that become a mall? And then that starts creeping further into our neighborhood? I really oppose this. And the other thing is that it's my understanding that this property and the other property that the woman spoke to, there is a pending litigation at the Wash County Superior Court. So why would we be changing a zoning on something that is being litigated and we don't even know how that's going to turn out? So again, I'm just opposed to start turning the Bonnet Shores Fire District into a commercial business. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tommy?
Good evening, Tom Montecula, 1029 Boston Road, Narragansett.
Tom, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
This whole thing, I think, had a smell from the beginning. I live in the condos right back with my wife, and a few things. I was here today to ask that Councilman Murray recuse himself because I think he had a continuation of a vested financial interest in this particular sale, which he admitted to and was recused. Thank you. I have. Secondly, when it was advertised for sale with a big, say, 5x5 sign on the front part of the property, I think I saw Councilman Murray's name, and I think I saw the for sale. Commercial. Yep. Okay. And obviously, that was wrong because it is not zoned commercial, it's zoned residential. So that's cleared up. We were jumping the gun. That's why I said it stunk from the beginning.
Can I address that?
or what was going on, I don't know.
Let him finish and then you can speak.
Secondly, we do have a water concern. About 17 years ago, when I moved in, and we have the first unit coming down, the condominium association spent several thousands of dollars to put a drain to obtain that water coming down. The present owner of the property just recently did some cleaning up of that property from the front to the back. It looks very nice, very green, very lawnish. But as he got closer to our area, ripping out the bushes, cutting trees, the amount of water, surface water coming on our property increased dramatically. I went to the town hall probably soon thereafter, and I spoke to one of the gentlemen there, and we had a conversation about the responsibility, which I knew who the responsible person was, for this particular increase in the amount of water coming down. So we took care of it 17, 16 years ago. We want to make sure, if anything is changed tonight, adverse to our interest, that will be taken care of as well, but this time by the property owner. Also, the gentleman mentioned that, hey, listen, we're not going to bail out someone who made a financial decision 7 or 8 years ago to buy this property, knowing it was a specific zone. So he has an authority, he has an ability to use the property for what it's zoned for. And we feel it's going to cause a diminution in value to our property if you allow this to be zoned unlimited general business, not knowing what's going to be going in there. It's going to be a business area with, and once again, we're not commercial, as the gentleman from the town said at the outset. Our property is not commercial. Rezoning it to commercial, we would still be residential, and we feel the diminution of value of our property will be forthcoming as soon as that shovel goes in the ground. So, I'm asking, weigh the interest of the residential people around the area with one person who perhaps made a mistake, perhaps did not, because he could put a residential building in there. He can increase it to the amount of numbers that the town code allows that to be done. So he does not have a piece of property that is useless to him. So the highest and best use of that particular property may simply be residential, not commercial. So once again, weigh the interest of the residents around that particular area, all throughout that area, with one vote to assist one person to increase the value of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Oh, yes, Mr. Fleming from the Planning Board.
Terrence Fleming, 38 Bedford Circle.
Terry, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. Just wanted to give the planning board perspective on some of this. As you know, for those of you who know how the planning board has dealt with that stretch of Narragansett, that road, during the comp plan process and through any specific proposals, you know how concerned we are about traffic. We share the same concern about traffic there. To that end, people don't understand that property owners north of the Rite Aid lot wanted to turn lots into commercial. We rebuffed that. We recommended to the council that that remain residential. Similarly to the south, except for the lots that you've already approved that historically were commercial, the liquor store, the pizza place. And if you look at the land use map in the comp plan, that is intended to be residential. There's no contemplation. This argument that some people make about Mineral Spring Avenue just isn't borne out by the comprehensive future land use map. In addition, the west side of Boston Neck Road, between the Bonnet Shores light and the Rite Aid light, if you look at it, there's one commercial property right at the intersection, and everything else is either public, institutional, which is the Montessori School, or residential. So the commercial, and the planning board has to take everyone's interest into consideration, the neighbors and the property owners in any of these considerations, as does the council. And so that side, the east side, was the one which is largely commercial, and that lot sits there as residential, and the applicant wanted it to be commercial. We are very concerned about the traffic there, but also felt that in the context of everything else that was done, that was a reasonable request to recommend, whatever the council decides. I will say the flaw in a lot of people's logic, if you will, is relative to this runoff issue, and the drainage is always an issue, and that needs to be dealt with. Two things. One is that lot isn't vacant. It's vacant, but it's not in a conservation. Something's going to go there. And if a building goes there with driveway and roof lines and hardscape, it's going to cause runoff. We have a standard in this town that there can be no new net runoff to neighboring properties for any construction, whether it's residential or commercial. So to say...
Can you say that again?
Did I say
Say
it
that
wrong?
one more time.
No new net runoff.
People don't seem to understand.
It's an engineering standard that has to be met. And the fact is, this is now, if somebody wants to donate this lot to the land trust, I'm sure the land trust might consider it, or if they want to put a conservation easement, the fact is, something may go there, whether it's a single-family home, seasonal rental under large seasonal rental, or affordable housing under a residential zone, or commercial. Something may go there eventually. It's going to cause traffic issues with curb cuts. It's going to cause runoff issues that have to be addressed. So the zone change to commercial doesn't necessarily, the rebuff of the zone change to commercial doesn't necessarily take care of the runoff issues. If it's a house, it's going to have runoff. So that's something that people should just take into account. Totally understand the traffic issue. We've been extremely concerned about it. Understand every time there's a development on that commercial side, we've gone to the state with some kind of mitigation issue, center lane, another light. We've been rebuffed by the state. They're the ones in control of that. So we'll continue to do what we think is appropriate. And you folks know what we do in that issue. Last point I'll make, and I don't want to be the skunk at the picnic on this one, and I don't have all the information, but I went to the town to look at the maps. This lot does not appear to be in the Bonnet Shores Fire District, based on the map that's in the file that I saw. Now, if there's another map, okay,
It is in the fire district.
well, everybody says that. I saw a map. So, okay, maybe we have the wrong map.
Yeah,
please.
Order, yeah.
I got it from the town, okay? I'm not making up maps. So I went and got the map. If there's a different map, that's fine. And that's for you to decide. The fact that it is or isn't in the Bonnet Shores District may have no impact on the council's decision. That's up to you all. I just wanted to put that out because rather than just accept something, I went and tried to get the documentation. And I'm just telling you what I have.
Terry, I'd like to see that town map. I don't know where it is.
So
both Terrys, I want to see.
Yeah,
that
you
map.
know.
We have to fix it.
We just,
okay.
that's the only.
No.
So, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Langer.
Hello. Anita Langer, 241 Colonel John Gardner Road.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I do. I can assure you, I live in Bonnet Shores. I've been on the council for over 15 years. I've been on the land trust. I can assure you that this piece of property is in the fire district. My concern has been that we have a state legislated charter which clearly defines the land from the ocean to Boston Neck Road. And that whole area that's in it, and it's clear that this is residential. It's how it started. There's never been commercial allowed. And this is the second piece of property that has been changed, or an attempt has been made to change the zoning from residential to commercial. I don't see this happening in any other development. I haven't seen this happen in Metatopsic. I haven't seen this happen in Pequawamsket. I haven't seen it happen in Edgewater. What is going on? Just because there are some commercial pieces. They're not in the fire district. But those that are in the fire district are residential, including that gas station that is residential. I'm very concerned as to how this has been cherry-picked along with other pieces of property that have been cherry-picked from the Bonnet Shores Fire District and turned into commercial. I'm very upset. It's where I live. It's a community that people love, and they would like to keep it residential. A second issue is we already have, and I'm on the council presently, the Bonnet Shores Fire District Council. I can tell you that we're in litigation. It's public knowledge. There are public documents. And we are in litigation with the town right now over the last piece of property that is in the fire district that was turned commercial and is being used incorrectly at this point. So I think before you do anything, you should not be doing anything that there's already litigation pending for the same reason. Thank you.
Thank you. You've already spoken. Patty.
Good evening. My name is Patty Goonan. I live at 6 Bonnet Shores Road.
Patty, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. All right. My husband spoke earlier about the traffic, which everybody knows, everybody's acknowledged that. I'm looking at it also as I feel our neighborhood is creeping away. If you chose to change this to commercial, I think we need to savor that beautiful part of Bonnet Shores, Narragansett. We've lived there for 18 years, and that was the reason why we wanted to be here. And I think that the thought of losing neighborhood is a tragic thing. It's a tragic thing. I know that the corner property, which was changed to that real estate office, I was opposed to that, and I'm sort of still opposed to changing anything into commercial at this point. But I have to tell you, it's a heck of a lot better than the fraternity parties that were going on and on and on. I was calling the police at 2 o'clock every morning. They were coming. So I hate to admit, but it's quiet there. But it could have also been a residential home if whoever owned that would rent or sell it to somebody who would live the life that we're supposed to be living in Bonnet Shores. I'm very upset over this, that it is up for this, and I appreciate the councilwoman and the councilman who return my phone calls. That I am very concerned over this, and the traffic is a major issue. But you have to know when to go out. To go to CVS, and you make sure you go and you go up to Rocks at the same time so that you're on the same side of the road. And then you go to Rite Aid and you turn around the parking lot and come back on the traffic light. And that's sort of like how I navigate now. But thank you for listening to me, and I hope that you will preserve the neighborhood that we should be living in. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Mark, a couple questions. How are we doing with that real estate office lawsuit? What's the status on that? I haven't had an update on that one.
I'm going to have to check with Andy, but it was my understanding that that we had reached agreement on a resolution there.
But we probably should keep that in executive session, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's been voted on yet, but
Right. I just got a question for Mike DeLuca. I got a couple questions for you. All right, that's R10, and it's basically 3/4 of an acre approximately.
Yeah, 30,000 square feet.
So can you get 3 houses there?
It's not wide enough to be divided into 3 separate house lots.
So maybe probably a duplex?
A duplex,
Townhouses.
I believe there's sufficient frontage for a duplex, with relief through the zoning board, maybe a triplex, but that's uncertain.
So the property has value. I don't think, you know, it's my professional opinion, it's not a dog that he's trying to get commercial. I mean, this is the comp plan process that we go through every 10 years. And, you know, the experts suggested, right? You know what? So, this was something that was rammed through or pushed through for my benefit and anybody's benefit. I can sell a residential lot just as easy as a commercial one. So, either way, you know, I just want to make that a point.
It was one of the dozen or so properties that came to us during the comprehensive plan process, as you know, which took about 4 years.
And again, one more time,
reviewed and vetted through the planning board.
anything goes there. If they got concrete, it needs to be pervious. It needs to drain, so it doesn't go on the other property, correct? Or whatever,
not
crushed
entirely.
stone or whatever.
It needs to be vetted or
All
designed.
the water stays on that property. A drainage plan, drainage management plan, correct?
Yes, it needs to be designed in accordance with section 7.7 of the zoning ordinance, which is our stormwater requirement.
All right, what I'm going to do is, if the council would like to do it, we could close this hearing unless there's anything else that people want to hear on this. All right, so I'm going to do I'm going to do these for Terry, each property one by one. So we'll take a motion to close the public hearing with regard to Plat NR Lot 146-G, Boston Neck Road.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, and then after this vote, after we vote to close, then I'd be looking for a motion one way or the other on where we're going to go on this. Okay. All in favor?
Excuse me, sorry. This is just closing it on this specific.
Just this one. Yeah, yeah. That you got that, Terry? Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh. Okay. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. And now, do we have a motion regarding the? Motion to close the hearing. Approved 4-0. Is there a motion regarding the property? The motion would be to change the zoning designation of Plat NR Lot 146G, Boston Neck Road, from R10 residential to BB general business. If someone wanted to make that motion, or you can make an alternative motion.
I move just to keep this currently as R10 zoning.
So we have a motion to maintain this Plat NR Lot 146-G to maintain it at R10 zoning. Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, so the concerns have been raised about traffic on Boston Neck Road are something that consistently comes up when there's changes to commercial properties. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Accused? All opposed? Motion approved 4-0. Thank you, everybody. So now we're going to move on. We still have our open public hearing to the Plat P Lot 292 Westmoreland Street, and this is a change from R40 residential to IA industrial. I'm going to ask the applicant or his attorney to come forward. And before you speak, Mr. Doherty, would you like to talk about these together or separately? How have you prepared it?
I'd like to do them separately.
Separately, okay. All right, so then we're going to discuss these separately, although they're abutting properties. So this is, if we can get on screen which one we're looking at, this is 292. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Doherty.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. 292 is a approximately 2.5 acre parcel of property, and this one is the larger one that abuts the Glen Oaks property. And I understand, I apologize, I was not able to be here for the April meeting, otherwise we could have addressed some of the issues that arose there specifically. I was out of state in Florida. But we've done a lot of research and reflection on some of the comments that were made at the hearing that night, and also some of the suggestions that were put forth. And right now, as it presently zoned, it's an R40 piece of property, but it does have some constraints in there. There are some wetlands. I know that there were some concerns over the Glen Oaks property, wanting to maintain a buffer and having some greenery in there as well. And that's fine, and I think that's going to be borne out by some of the limitations on the property in terms of the
wetlands that are present, although it is a developable piece of property, particularly with respect to the central portion of it. That being said, though, we've taken into consideration council members' comments at the public hearing about how this would be an ideal place to do some sort of a residential development with a component for affordable housing, not low-income housing. We're not talking HUD subsidized housing, but we're talking about something that would be for teachers, firefighters, town hall employees, things like that. And that's something that we certainly need. I mean, the town hasn't nowhere near met its 10% target of affordability. However, what we would like to do, obviously, right now it's advertised for an IA designation. And on behalf of my client, James Durkin, we don't really have a problem with you wanting to put this into, more residential category. However, what we would like to do, obviously, I think if we were going to look at doing something along the lines of meeting some housing needs in the town, is we would like to see it put into an R10, so that what we would be looking for would be overbearing relief from an R40 in terms of what you could develop there versus an R10. If you were to develop some component of affordable housing with this, that would give us density bonuses right off the bat, which I think could work in some form of cluster development or something similar to what they have at Glen Oaks right now. The neighbors' concerns could certainly be addressed in any development, and it would have to go through a planning process and a zoning process. But I think you would find, due to the constraints on the property, that a lot of the buffer area would be left there. But keep in mind as well, too, we probably have to centrally locate, because if you've been, I was on the property, I've been there a bunch of times, but I was there specifically today, too. And one of the real hard constraints that you have on this is that it's across the street from the sewer plant. I think it can work based on location. There's predominantly southwest winds there, so obviously the smell is a huge recurring issue over there. And so it would only be directly hit if there were, I think, severe northeast winds that would be hitting this. But we would like to, work with that, work with some of the suggestions that the town council had. So we would be happy to not have it zoned industrial if the council sees fit to try and have this piece of property serve a need in the town. We're open to suggestions on that. Of course, if you want to see fit and have it zoned IA, we'd be more than happy to do that as well. But I understand, and I've spoken to some of the butters from Glen Oaks just walking in here this evening. And I can see their concerns. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But we do need some form of relief being granted, or some change to be made over there, just simply because of the proximity to the plant and some of the constraints there. But if you have any questions about it, I'd be more than happy to answer. But I've spoken with council as well prior to being here tonight, and we're willing to work with the town, and we're willing to work with the abutters.
So I don't want to short circuit the hearing process, and if people want to testify to this specific issue, they have the right to. I'd want to see what the council's thoughts were on what you put forward. We obviously couldn't do that tonight, but wouldn't want to send you also to change a zone that the council doesn't feel. So why doesn't everybody, if people have thoughts on that? I know people talked about this at the public hearing, so why don't we have them?
Yeah, correct one thing, I apologize. I just realized I referred to this as 2.5 acre. It's more than that. It's approximately 3.25 to 3.5 acres. So
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Does anyone comment on that first before I?
Sure. So we have the 2 lots here. I'm not sure during what you said if you did you specify that the smaller lot what would you be requesting for the smaller lot?
Well, we would like to proceed forward with the smaller lot as an industrial. If you go and there's some good reasons that it should be that. Number one, it's directly across from where they pump out the trucks. And I was parked there today, and even with prevailing winds and whatnot, there's issues. You can smell it. It's directly across from where the trucks pull up and pump that out. So I don't see that being a residential property. It's not going to be plagued with problems and complaints on the resident to the facility. In addition to that, and we have a graphic when that one comes up, we're trying to do these separately because they are different. Even though they're connected, the constraints of the smaller lot as well. You'll see we have a graphic that some wetlands were done, and there are wetlands on both sides of the property, the west and the east side of the property, which would place any development of the smaller lot smack in the middle and give a buffer for both sides. And the smaller lot too, if you look at it, it's surrounded by commercial industrial developments. The town's DPW, I think it's DPW garage now, and we also have another facility with the towers, the communication towers around that area. So, if you look at it, it's surrounded on three sides by some pretty serious industrial activity, and I wouldn't want to put a homeowner into that property in a residential zone. I'm sure you would not, that they'd be coming up here screaming about the town's activities behind them and on the side, and the sewer plant across the street. So it makes sense, and it would also, on the eastern side of the lot, of the larger lots, there is a wetland that's existing along the border of the two properties, the adjoining border. So any development of that of an industrial nature would be limited, and it also would be pushed more into the center of the lot. And on the eastern side of the lot, there's another wetland as well. So we'd have setbacks and buffers. And when we get to that, I believe Mike DeLuca has a graphic that we provided to him, which was done by a wetlands biologist that shows those limited areas.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I think this is a pretty good example of compromising, on the whole situation, really. Mr. Durkee came in a few months ago to the public hearing. Obviously listened to what everyone was saying up here, listened to what people in town were saying, people that live in Glen Oaks, and in my opinion, I think is presenting something that really is, giving a lot back. It really is a compromise, and I would commend him on being flexible with that lot and coming up with something that checks off a lot of the boxes. And I think that having the R10 zone would be a benefit, because if we're going to do some affordable housing, I think you want to get as much as possible in there. I know the people at Glen Oaks are probably not going to be thrilled to lose, wooded land, but you can't get everything you want, and you're still getting residential as opposed to industrial. And then the industrial lot is pretty small, so it's not going to be a large industrial complex. It's probably one building farther back away from Glen Oaks. So I would support this plan.
Yeah, and just in following up too, I've spent a few hours with Mr. DeLuca going over the property, potential uses, what the town's needs are, what the town would be looking, for in terms of any residential development of the larger lot as well. We haven't really found, speaking for myself, on behalf of my client, we don't have a lot of pushback on any of these things at all. So I think I agree, I think it's a good compromise.
So based on our vote from the first parcel where we maintained the R10 zoning, the comp plan is going to be amended. So whatever we do with this property, we know that we're going to have that. So now we have 3 possible zones we're talking about for 292. That's what the conversation is here. So any other thoughts from the council? And then we can open up the public hearing.
Do you have any idea about the industrial lot? Mr. Durkin, thank you so much. I know I spoke with you about this, the affordable housing in the town's need, and that certainly is. And having met with the folks from Glen Oaks, I think that they might really appreciate the fact that you'll be doing this affordable housing. But as for the industrial parcel, you can see the stream going through it. So I know you're going to show later on with Mike DeLuca the exact footprint, what you think. But do you have any idea what use are you thinking about putting in the industrial?
I can't speak to that. Do you have any idea at this point?
Jim, do you want to state your name and address?
James Durkin, 375 Ocean Road.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So originally, facility on a large lot. And so that's not going to happen. So the small lot I really had no plan on, and I would think being there today and looking, I was there today for 15 minutes, and 4 trucks pulled up in front of that small lot. They get out of the, they get out of the truck, they go in, get permission to dump, and they dump in that little area right 80 feet of the lot. And right there, that's where they open up the back of the truck, and that's where they dump, and it's fine, but I mean, if you live there, you would want it. So I think maybe like a little building where somebody can go do something that, they can't do in their backyard, like fix boats or, work on a truck, or, I don't know, maybe just a little scientific lab or something. Nothing that's gonna pollute the wetland or anything like that.
Because I know one of the concerns from the meeting with Glen Oaks, they were concerned about increased traffic coming down on the road. So you're talking about a small building that might have a mechanic or something, maybe 1 or 2 people, 3 people.
Yeah, there's wetland strips on both sides of the lot, so you have to have there's not much you can build on it. So it'll probably be as big as a house, but it would be something that you could actually do there, and I think they would do it during the day. But I don't have a plan.
With respect to the physical characteristics of the property too, I was on there today on the site. I walked the street front perimeter, or not perimeter, the street frontage of it. And you could see the water off towards the town's DPW garage, clear as day right there. There's a wetland there, and as I said, on the western side too. So the property itself is very limited. It's not going to be lending itself to any kind of large-scale development or any massive parking lots or anything. It's a very, it's a small piece. The location, what they have there, I can't see it being anything that would generate any large amount of traffic whatsoever, from a development perspective. I just can't.
Thank you. And Mike, we could, as we have done in other projects, we could take a look at the uses for under that code and go back and eliminate, so we can make sure, okay?
Yeah, and one thing that I'd also like to say in defense of the council here too tonight, I was in the town, and I'm sure a lot of you were too, that this comprehensive plan and the zone changes that were put forth by the planning board were the work of countless numbers of meetings, countless hearings, public input was taken every step of the way. This isn't dumped on you. It's a state law that puts this burden on you to change the map to reflect what is in the comprehensive plan of the future land use map. So you've got a statutory obligation here. You're taking other things into consideration, and you're actually being proactive, whereas most councils in other cases in cities and towns would just go ahead and grant this as a matter of fact because it's already been deliberated on for a period of years. So I think you'd be, with all due respect to some of the comments I heard, I think you're to be commended for paying extra special attention to the little idiosyncrasies that are coming up with these lots and working with the abutters and the property owners to do something about it. But people should know that in the public, that this was a process of many, many years, many, many public hearings, planning boards, everyone was involved in the town, department heads and whatnot. And this is just the way that the government is seeing fit to set out the process statutorily.
So we're going to open up the public hearing now. This new, if other council members want to talk before that, this proposal puts a little wrinkle into the conversation that people can comment on, but go ahead.
So just so we have it for the record, either Mike or Steve, does this property have to be rezoned in order to make affordable housing?
That's a tough question. It's not an easy.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, but if you rezone it to industrial, that would be...
Right, I understand that.
Yeah,
so if the
that's
zoning
the
was left as it is, it could be affordable housing. It wouldn't restrict anything of how many units could be put on it?
No, in the case of comprehensive permits is the terms we use for the affordable housing developments. In the case of comprehensive permits, the development plan is conceptualized by the applicant, and the density is set forth by agreement between the applicant and the planning board based on the number of units that the site can actually physically support through, with the considering the utilities and facilities that support residential, and the ratio of the affordable units to the market rate units.
So leaving it as is, it could be...
Doesn't negate, to finish your sentence,
Right.
Councilman,
No,
doesn't
no.
negate the potential to ask for affordable housing development, that's true.
Right. So I mean, if we change it to R10, somebody could go in there if they choose to and put up houses versus affordable housing.
If you change it to R10, then it's available to be developed at the R10 density.
Right. So if it's left where it is, pretty much if you're going to build something there and we're looking for the affordable housing, it would have to be the affordable housing.
Well, I can't say that for certain, but I think I understand where you're going. The density at R40 is 1 unit per 40,000 square feet. At R10, it's 1 unit per 10,000 square feet, so it's 4 times the amount.
So the proposal is a change to industrial, which would allow for industrial uses.
That's what's
right
on the
now. We
table.
have R40 in front of us, which is it requires a lot more square footage for you to build a house than an R10. That we've heard this R10 argument come forward tonight, which would allow more single-family houses to go on that parcel. So those are the 3 things being looked at. Anyone?
May I add one thing to mix in this?
Sure.
If you don't mind.
If you could show, if you also, is there a way to, do you want to, are you more into the R10 or the industrial, or do you want to still have the public hearing? I mean, there's a lot of dynamics now opened up.
I don't think we need a public hearing for the industrial right now, because I think you're going to hear people coming out of the woodwork saying no on this particular lot. And I think my client is amenable to doing something here. But what I would like to suggest here, what Mr. DeLuca said was true. You can apply for a comprehensive permit just about any lot, However, when you do apply, you have to ask for waivers, relief from zoning and the planning board, since it's a super permitting body. The site does have wetlands constraints on it. It's a 3.5 acre site, 3.25 to 3.5 acre. So if you look at this, and if you leave it as R40, we're going to be asking for a heck of a lot more relief versus an R10. The constraints of the property, I mean, you're not going to see a skyscraper or a 70-unit apartment building over there, or anything approaching that magnitude. But it makes it a lot more palatable to a board that is looking at a comprehensive review permit if you've already got some density built into that as well. The site constraints are going to take away from the ability to do that. You can't just say, okay, it's 120,000 square feet, so we can do 12 units right off the bat. If you do an R10, it's just not going to work. The site constraints, the wetlands, the frontage, all these other things that you have to comply with for zoning, setback, and the like. You're going to still have to do that. So if you do this R40, I don't know how many houses you can build, but I wouldn't want to take a mortgage on my house to build them.
I have a procedural question for Steve and/or Mike. Steve, so do we need to, in terms of amending the comp plan, do we need to vote down the zone change that's being proposed technically, instead of just having it withdrawn because it came through the comp planning process, not through an individual applicant?
Yeah, it'd be my suggestion either that you table the matter or vote right now before you is essentially just a change to the
I, to the I,
Yeah,
right?
so-
So then vote up or down on that, so that we're clean on amending. Okay.
And then you would go forward with the amendment of the plan.
And then they could come forward in a separate way.
Exactly,
That's
just
right.
like we did on the individual lots on some other process.
Okay.
Mr. President, the only thing that I'd like to see, just for purposes of preserving rights, I mean, in the event that this isn't successful and we don't go there, I'd hate like heck to see a denial of the IA. If we're trying to work with the town here, we're trying to take things into consideration, but you're setting precedent with the denial right now.
But we have to amend the comp plan, Pat, so
Oh,
it goes
no.
through,
Yeah.
right, so we have, that's the dynamic that's dicey, so do you want, and I don't want to get bored people here.
If we could. Yeah, I would definitely prefer tabling. You don't have to take the action. I mean, you're prompted by state law to do that, but you're allowed to delay it. I mean, it happens all the time. You can put forth an amendment as well that would supersede this.
So then probably, how do you feel about a motion to table?
I think a motion to table, and then we re-advertise an amended application for a better word later on, and that would solve both of the purposes. It would stay in the R40, no action would be taken by the council. It would be a denial, but yet, as Mr. Doherty said, the council does have time. Some towns take, it's already been a few years anyway, so it's another couple of months to this point.
So everyone can see where this is going. So now, if members of the public want to speak to it, knowing that that's kind of the route we're going, come forward. Not to say, but.
Bill Lamberti, 320 Westmoreland Street, Narragansett.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Members of the council, thank you for letting me speak. Just a couple of things, since there's not going to be a withdrawal this minute, it sounds like there's not going to be a vote on this, on the zoning change. So once again, we're into another deferral to some point in time that doesn't get announced. So the only thing I would advise is, please notify the abutters if there is going to be an amendment to this to the zoning proposal, right? Because we're trying to find your schedule, and we never get notified. So first, I just want to clarify a couple of things. So first and foremost, right? I'm not sure how the comprehensive plan is formed. I know there's a lot of hours, there's a lot of pages that went into it, but I will say, abutters, it took a year and a half before the abutters to this property were actually notified that there's a proposed zoning change. So all the work was done between the planning commission and the applicants, and nothing to do with the residents that surround it. So just from a process check, I think it would be a good thing to do. And second, if you read the state statutes, they allow amendments all the time. In fact, it's so easy to do that they restrict you to 4 times a year. So clearly, it's not that difficult. The second thing, to clarify a couple of points, everybody talks about the sewage treatment plant. Look, this sewage treatment plant has been, because we've been in there at Westman for Westman before, but we've been at Glen Oaks for 20 years now. We live across the sewage treatment plant. They are actually very good neighbors. And in fact, that property that's just up from the digester, that would be to the northeast of the digester, just went on the market for $1.2 million. Right? So please don't tell me that a sewage treatment plant is necessarily a bad neighbor. Yes, there are trucks there. They run from about 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. They don't really come on Saturdays. They're not there on Sundays. And in fact, it's not an industrial zone area. Neither is the town garage. These are all public, I don't know the exact terminologies. These are publicly zoned areas. The town garage operates, they basically close up shop 3 and 3:30 in the afternoon. They're actually very good neighbors on the street. And when we get into an industrial area, even that little lot, we don't know what's going in, right? This industrial allows a lot of different businesses to run. So I think we just got to be very mindful about, well, I'm thinking of this or I'm thinking of that. We have to get some more specifics about what's going to be developed there, and to actually restrict, how the property can be used, right? And I think that would be good. That is a compromise, right, for everyone on the street. So anyway, that's all I want to say. Thank you very much. It's nice to hear that. It's nice to hear we're thinking of alternate uses of this land. As I said, you can see right through this property from Glen Oaks, just like you can see the sewage treatment plant right from a $1.2 million property. So apparently that's not an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Lynn Maslin, 320 Westmoreland, Narragansett.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I know this is probably not going to be voted on today, if I understand the procedures correctly, but I just wanted to thank you for listening to the members of Glen Oaks, and I want to thank Jimmy Durkin for listening also. It's kind of, it's nice when you live in a small town. I don't really have that much involvement with government, but it's kind of nice to know that you can get up here and you guys are listening. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You know what, so I sort this out procedurally. Can we take a 5-minute break and then come back and we know exactly what we're doing? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I wanted to sort out the procedural piece of this because it is somewhat unclear. As you know, there's an amendment to the comp plan at the same time as a change to the zone. So, but in this case, that's not what's going to happen. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marcella to explain what we're going to do based on this conversation about a possibility of changing this to an R10 zone. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Matt. All right, so because there's essentially two items on the agenda, one is the comprehensive plan and one is the zone change. What I'm going to recommend is that we continue the matter to a date certain, and that date is November 4th, 2019, for essentially the process to move forward. And the process which we envision it would be for the applicant and the town to work together to put forth a proposal to amend both the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance to an R10. Now that doesn't mean it's going to pass or not pass that, but that would be the procedure to continue the matter today, to re-advertise the zone change and the comprehensive plan change for a proposed R10, and then for that matter to be heard in the same manner it's been heard now, both for and against the project, and November 4th, 2019. So that would be my recommendation.
And so if the R10 discussion goes well, then essentially the applicant wouldn't push for the November date. But we heard what the neighbors said that they wanted a date, sorry.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's tabled, it just sits on the table.
So yeah.
And we haven't done anything, so that's what we are trying to figure this out procedurally. But if the council can also make a different motion than that too, so.
Yeah, correct. And then in November, should that process look favorable, then the matter again could be heard based upon the R10 zoning. Everyone would have their input, and the council could again vote at that time based upon all the information given.
All right, so we have a couple options here. We can have a motion to continue this to the November 4th date, or if somebody has a different motion they want to put forward, but that procedurally is the best way we figured out to do the change to the industrial. But any motions anyone wants to
I believe
make?
Mr. Lima has something to say.
So again, this affordable housing, I mean,
Affordable housing has nothing to do with the zone change.
but you wouldn't have to change the zone. You could leave it at R40 and do affordable housing, right?
Well, right now, all we're doing is, right now, the matter before the council is to change the zone to industrial.
Right.
Because that's the matter, we would have to re-advertise and do everything appropriately. We just can't say, all right, well, it came before the council as industrial, and that doesn't look like the appropriate way to do it. So let's just vote on R10. I think it would be my opinion that the matter needs to be vetted again, re-advertised again, and continued to a date certain. Again, for if the applicant and the council decided with public input that R10 would be the best use for the property, for whatever use the landowner decided, then certainly that would be able to be voted on at the November meeting. But you just can't advertise it as industrial and then through the discussion and public input think, all right, well now we think we have a better use for that land and then vote on that use tonight. It wouldn't be appropriate.
Steve, could we vote not to have it be industrial tonight, the larger portion?
Yes.
You certainly could. However, if you do deny it, then the whole entire process would have to start again. It would have to be referred out to the planning board. It would have to be re-advertised and we'd have to do the full advertising, the full hearing process again for what has already been through the process for years and years with the comprehensive plan and been through the process once already, but certainly, I mean, you certainly can deny the change. However, if that's done, then we would have to come back anyway to amend the comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan has this lot as industrial. So no matter what, the reason for the continuance is no matter what vote, either a denial, if a denial happens today, this lot's going to have to come back before you again to change the comprehensive plan. And I think it's just cleaner and easier to deal with both of those matters at the same time, to either change it to the R10, or if it's to leave it as is, we would have to amend the comprehensive plan back from the IA back to the R40. Because it sits, if you look at the map, it sits between an R10, so it's kind of, I don't want to say bad planning, but it really doesn't work well if you got a kind of an individual lot between two different zones.
But we can, I guess it comes down to as well, how everyone, I mean, we still have the hearing open. If the council members, you know, if the council members want to go the R10 route, or they're at least open to that. If not, then we said, then you would do an up or down vote. So what I'll do here is, if there's anyone who wants to speak to what's in front of us, which is still the change to the I, let's do that, and then we'll close the hearing and make a decision. Right? But we're not forcing, come on, please come forward. Yep. We just want to sort out procedurally the concern that the Glen Oaks neighbors had about if it's tabled, we're going to have to keep looking in the paper when it comes off the table.
Would you raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
I guess I'm just confused about why.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just confused about why you can't vote on the industrial one. I know you said because it seems like it's a whole big deal that you have to go through again. But don't you have to go through it anyway? Whether it's now or November, it seems, and maybe my thinking, I'm not a planner or anything, I'm just a, you know, but it seems to me that by taking one step today, you kind of get the ball rolling. I mean, you get the ball rolling so that then the industrial part of that is taken off the table. It's done. You move on with the next, whether it be R10 or R40 or, you know, whatever you decide. That's going to happen anyway at the later date. But it's the industrial part of it that we initially were against, and that's what I'd like to see resolved today, not in November or December or January, however long we drag this out for. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
What would be the timing if we were to say we're going to vote down the industrial tonight? How much time would that put on the clock for this process? Does it go back to a regular planning board meeting, or what? How much time we're talking about? So we go on the next planning board meeting. We're talking about a month.
No, Mike. Maybe for advertising, Mike will be better for the whole process.
Well, we have two actions to take. One is to amend the comprehensive plan land use map, the one I keep shooting up there on the wall, and the other is to submit for the public hearing for the zone change. They can be done concurrently. There's nothing in the state law that stops us from putting them on the same agenda, both for planning board reference recommendation and for public hearing here. As the suggestion is to go to November, the early November meeting, in the procedures laid out by Solicitor Marcella, we could probably still meet that timeline if you were starting over from scratch. There still has to be advertising done, as Steve said, by the planning board for their public hearing, and then there's obviously advertising for your hearing. So we have to build in all that extra time. That's why we can't do it just next month or even in August. We need an extra couple months just to build in all that advertising time. But November wouldn't be out of the question to do it in either format.
I had a question. Steve, can we dissect a small lot and vote on that up and down tonight?
Yeah, we're taking this as a separate, 292 is a separate application, and then you guys
All right, is there anyone else? Any other comments? No? All right, so then the question is going to be now, here we are, do you want to close the public hearing or do you want to continue it? I mean, the council, so if someone wants to make a motion to that effect. Let's have some order, you know. So, you've heard the procedural piece of it, but we also, it is in front of us as a change to industrial, so it's really a pledge of the council. There's anyone else, we can continue it, or we can close the hearing.
We're talking about 292 specifically?
Yeah.
Let's make a motion to close.
Is there a second? Discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Close it, yes, yeah, aye.
No.
All right, motion approved 4-1. Okay, so and then is there now a motion on the property?
Motion to deny the change to industrial.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion on that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
No.
Motion approved 3-1. All right, thank you. We're going to move on to Plat P, Lot 293, Westmoreland Street, from R40 residential to IA industrial.
Members of the council, Patrick Doherty representing the applicant, or the property owner Jim Durkin. Thank you very much for the answers. Mike, do you have that graphic? While he's getting that up, this is, as I said, a much smaller property. It's currently zoned R40. It's 0.812 acres as listed in the assessor's map. There are some wetlands constraints, as I said, on the east and the west boundaries, which would limit any development to the central portion of the property. As you can see, the circle 293 over there, this was done by Linda Steele, who flagged the wetlands informally for this. And as you can see, the center of the property is high and dry. The wetland area that is the ziggy line going down the left side and the right would necessitate that there would be a buffer from the residential land in any event. So I think that can allay any concerns of the people that are 2 lots up. I mean, that's several hundred feet. The lot itself right there, 293, is 100 feet, and then you have another 360, I think that says, 350. So there's a significant amount of frontage out there that is going to set this way back from the Glen Oaks property. And as I said, you know, what the gentleman said about the listing of the property being 1.2 near a sewer plant, well, go there, go spend your time, take a ride there and stand there outside of your car or even in your car when those trucks are coming through. I had to shut my vents when I got out of the car, and the wind was not that strong. So we have a piece of property here that has some severe physical constraints and surrounding characteristics of the property around it, namely that sewer plant. My client would like to develop this property. It adds something to the tax rolls, and after hours upon hours upon hours of meetings, and public hearings, and review of the comprehensive plan, and specific discussions of this particular piece of property as well, the planning board and the town council saw fit to approve that as in the future land use map. So I don't see any, there's no way you're going to have residential use of that property. They'd have to be, have no sense of smell, sight, or sound. It's just the way it is. And some pieces of property are meant to be industrial uses. Certainly the small size of it, plus the limitations on the wetland, is going to severely limit. It's not like you're going to throw something huge in there. And the numerous uses that are allowed in an industrial facility, there's going to be required parking and a whole slew of other things that are in the zoning ordinance that severely limit the development possibilities for this piece of property. So we would ask you to approve that on the basis as well that, you've got the town's garage on two sides of it too. You have, the trucks are beeping incessantly. There's trailers going by with heavy-duty pickup trucks and six-wheelers going through there. There's 18-wheelers, there's septic trucks, there's all kinds of activity right in front of this thing. And I only think that it's appropriate and proper that this does get zoned IA. That's what it's meant to be. Go take a look at it, smell it, see it, hear it. It's a perfect transition to an industrial property. That's what's going on all around. And it certainly has enough of a buffer to be several hundred feet from any other residential uses in there. And certainly any residential development in Lot 292, if it does in fact occur, is going to have additional buffers, because any residential zone that abuts an industrial area is going to have more setbacks, and there's going to have to be screening and buffer. That's enhanced also by the presence of the wetlands, naturally, on not only the lot itself, but the lot 292. So I think this is a no-brainer. It's been discussed ad nauseum for years. If anyone has any other options, I'd love to hear them. But I've been physically on the property a number of times. I've looked at the surrounding area, and it was recommended by straight up and down, from the planning office, community development, planning board, all the way through. I can't see any other use for that piece of property.
Just one question for the record. This is the smaller property. What is the approximate size of this smaller parcel?
It's point in the tax assessor's record, so this is 0.812 acres.
Thank you. Any members of the council?
Yeah, just real quickly. Just wanted to mention that I was actually a little mixed up on that last motion. I thought we were talking about the smaller lot on the last one, and I realized now that I had it backwards. So I did actually intend to vote yes to not change the zoning on the larger lot. So Terry, I don't think we can correct it, but for the record, I was actually a yes vote on the last one. So I just want to make that clear. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Is that one question? That's the radio station next door to the east, right?
Yeah, it has something to do with some radio towers. I don't know if it's a station.
Yeah, it's a radio station.
Is it?
I think it's a cell phone.
All right.
Oh, actually, I just heard some other people in cell tower operations. That's
Not a station?
I think it's just maybe boosters or something along those lines.
All right, so it's a public hearing, so I wanted to hear if members of the public have anything to say, if anyone from the council. All right, does anyone wish to testify regarding this parcel? Yes, sir.
Bill Lamberti, 320 Westmoreland Street. I'm sorry? Lamberti.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you, Ben. Just a quick comment. I have really no objections to changing the zone to 1A. Just a couple of things I think that are mischaracterized on the street. You know, again, you go there on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday, there are not trucks running up and down the street. There is not a lot of sewage smell going on. I'm not really sure, what exactly you ran into. But anyway, it's not. The only thing I would suggest is that the council consider restrictions on what type of operation can go in on a 1A. That's a pretty broad characterization so I think we should put some restrictions on it. Secondly, don't forget, it's now going to border on a residential property at some point, right? So we need to think about 292 being residential, so, let's be mindful about that when we do put some restrictions. And like I always say, because we live across the street from the storage area, screening is short-lived, right? You get screening right when you first get the construction is accepted, and then 5 years down, the screening dies. Nobody's out there fixing it up. So I just say let's just be mindful about what use we allow on the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, so is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I have one question. Mike, you don't have a list of the uses over there, do you? IA zone? Andy?
No, I don't. As you recall, we have done that in the past with other rezones, and staff could look into a list of limitations. The only thing I would say about that is that being such a diminutive lot and having some resource constraints, wetlands on the site, there aren't too many uses that could go in there. The big industrial uses just don't fit on that small 7/8 of an acre lot. So I don't know that we really need a list because I think the site is self-limiting, but if the council sees fit to request it, we can put one together.
Thank you. So we have a motion to close the hearing still on the table. Any further discussion of that?
I'll make the motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. And is there a motion regarding the change of the zoning designation for lot 293?
Is there a way that we can change it tonight, but also to have in the fact that we want to take a look at the restrictions and take a look at that list? I know, Mike, it sounds, what you're saying is probably 100% accurate. We're looking at some homeowners and some future homeowners that we're going to want to make sure we protect them as well. So if we could take a look and limit to what can be put in there. And again, I have to thank Mr. Durgan so much for coming here and for working with us with the affordable housing. We certainly want to make sure that you can use your property, but we just want to make sure it's in the best capacity for a residential abutter.
So if there was a motion, we could potentially amend it to include what you're talking about. So if there's a motion on...
I mean, who would be able to vote on that tonight?
Now, who calls the shots? Who's the gatekeeper of what goes there and what doesn't go there?
Well, there would be a list of different types of businesses that we could say are acceptable.
Can we get a motion on the table first from somebody regarding what we are going to do with this?
I'm motion to do an up and down vote for IA zone.
All right, is there a second to that? Okay, is there another motion?
So, if we did a motion to rezone it to IA, is it easy enough to add the restrictions later? Is that something? Or
No, isn't it? You can amend the motion, but we need a motion right now so we can discuss. So is there a motion to? Wait, so is there?
I motion up and down vote for IA zoning for this parcel.
I'll say.
All right, discussion. Here is where it could be amended to say contingent, right, Steve? Amended to if we wanted to restrict uses in the IA.
Correct, but again, I don't know if that can't be done tonight. You'd have to literally take the zoning code and discuss every industrial use.
There's probably what, 80
industrial
mule skinner, tannery, they're from 1880.
But the council could select of that list certain ones, correct?
Well, Matt, if we change the zoning to IA, whoever, say, Durkin sells it or leases it out to somebody, at that point, that's when you can restrict the zoning. The guy wants to put in a mule skinning shop, all right? I don't think there's too many mule skinners.
Right, but some members of the community and some people on the council are saying that's possible to do with an ordinance. It'd be a first reading of an ordinance when this comes up. and there would be, that's where the discussion could take place. So we could instruct the staff to do that. But we don't have to, but that would accommodate that.
You can restrict it later on, whoever wants to go in there.
We know that. We know that.
All right, well, why?
Is it typical to have an ordinance for a single piece of property? Like, how common is that? Or does it just come up to planning and zoning every time?
You know, it's not very common because frankly it's easier, as you can tell from this process, it's easier to go to zoning, to get a zoning variance for, you know, for a specific use on the property. In this case, you're changing the use, which increases the standard. It would be a use variance, so it's a lot more difficult. But it's not uncommon to go through either process. Usually this process, it occurs when you're changing the use. In this case, the use is from residential to industrial. Otherwise, when it's a specific use that's allowed, you would go before zoning and planning, and you might need setback relief or buffer relief or height, and that would be for the zoning and planning process. So this process usually only takes place when there's an actual, again, change of use from residential to commercial or from commercial to industrial. Because it's such a lengthy, expensive, time-consuming process.
So Steve, a motion to instruct the town staff, the planning department, the community development to say, give us a suggested list of IA uses, but when we have the first reading, is that, that could be an amendment that could be made right now.
Sure.
Does someone want to make that amendment?
I'll make that amendment to have the planning board give us a list of acceptable uses for the first reading.
Is there a second to that?
Acceptable to who?
All right.
Acceptable to them.
Terry, you have that? Okay. All right. Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No, it's Ricky second.
Motion approved, 4 to 1. All right. Next, the final item is Plat L, Lot 282 on 1156 Point Judith Road from R10 Residential to BA Limited Business. So is the applicant here? Yes.
Patrick Doherty from the applicant, James Durkin.
Have a good night.
This is a unique piece of property, and it's already split zone. Majority of it is zone BA, and then there's a small component that's zone R10. And again, you know, there were so many meetings leading up to this process, so many public opportunities for input, and every one of these things was dragged through all the possibilities coming up before here tonight. I didn't hear any of this at any of those meetings that took place over the years, that everyone had notice of, that they were public advertisements with maps, with uses, with all sorts of things on it. And frankly, my client is now going to be put to the expense of coming through and arguing the same, or not even arguing, going through the entire same process all over again. Certain land has constraints. This is one of them. It's a split zone. The lots on Westmoreland Street, by another example, they have constraints. And that's why the planning board and the public and all the input saw fit to rezone these in the future land use map. And now this entire process is getting undone again. And we're having to redo the same thing all over again. And it's a shame, because if you want to control property that is adjacent to you, the way to do it is to buy it. And the town also has this document among one of them. This zoning ordinance here, multiple pages of restrictions, of constraints on any uses that are in any one of these areas. You know, like by example, the IA. If you look through the uses that are in the IA, for the majority of them, you have to seek a special use permit. So you have to come before zoning. You have to give specific notice to the abutting property owners hours. There are advertisements in the newspaper that list this, so anyone in the town can come in, voice their objections, go through the process, and vet the proposal. And that's what this is all about. The zoning code, the subdivision and planning regulations. They were put forth for what's going on here tonight to happen at those stages, at those levels, where you have the planning board and the zoning board who are more intimately familiar with each of the individual properties out there. So forgive my frustration, or my expressing my frustration with this process, but my client now is having to go back, and we're having I'm having deja vu here of meetings that took place before. And I say this with all due respect, but there was a process that went through hours and hours of hearings, and public servants like Mr. Fleming and the rest of the board, they spent their own personal time prepping for these meetings, going through this stuff, listening to constituent concerns, having people vet these at public hearings and then town council hearings. They saw fit, after all of this input, after going through the department heads, listening to the abutters, taking input from every possible source out there in the community, and they came up with these proposals. These aren't, they're not the whim of the property owner. Property owners were allowed to submit their parcels of property for inclusion in changes in the future land use map. But they didn't get them. More properties got denied for inclusion in those, from what I recall. There were a lot of people that came up, wanted stuff done. No, that's not what's in the interest of the town and its land use regulation. But these are. They've already been vetted. They've already been determined to be that. And we're not, there's no secret plan here. There's just an opportunity of a businessman who's invested his life and a lot of money in this community to try and build things and make it better. I can say this from the heart. Jim Durkin, I've been working for a long time on a lot of his stuff. And what I can say about Jim and Becky Durkin is they care about this town. They really do. Look at what they did with the Drake Hotel. When we were here years ago, I was the pariah of the community for a lot of people because, it's just going to be student housing or there's some other thing up his sleeve or he's going to do something. Well, we've got a flagship destination hotel in town because of that man willing to risk millions of dollars to develop it into something nice. He's not going to do anything like that with these properties. He's not going to just flip them off. He's got a vested interest in seeing that this town prospers. He'll prosper as well by virtue of that. But I'd like to address any real concerns, not speculation, and not things that should be addressed at zoning and planning board hearings when relief sought for a particular project is brought before a board. But this is another no-brainer. Across the street, you have the old, you have the new Iggy's. You have the old, which is right over in that, actually to the right of that. Then you have the original Iggy's that's on the corner that's going to be developed into something at some point. You've got Aunt Carrie's, you've got the ice cream thing for Aunt Carrie's up the street, you've got the Break Hotel. This is a perfect little hub. When we did the deal with Gilbane back before anyone here was on the council, we lost our community. We lost our center of town. This is what they're trying to do with the future land use map. They're trying to make little areas of commerce that make sense, that serve the needs of the community and the tourism that this town is based upon. So right now, where we have the BA district, it's an open lawn. And where we have the residential off to the side, it's on a busy street right there, but there's plenty of room. Any parking, any development concerns, any curb cuts, those have to go through DPW, they have to go through planning, they have to go through zoning. These are all things that they're hoops and hurdles that any developer of any piece of property has to go and meet and address. So I'm asking you to seriously consider this as a reasonable proposal. The direct abutting owners, they have expressed no objection to this. I've heard that there's a concern because it's a dead end of a street. That doesn't carry through the property. It's not a continuation. The only thing that goes down below that arrow is a sewer line that was put in, I assume, by the town some years ago. But this is another opportunity to make this a nice place. You know, I mean, people come to Narragansett. People come from all over the country. My niece is coming from New Jersey to hold her wedding here in August. Why? Because we're a beautiful destination beach town. But we've got to serve the needs of the residents and also the people that we depend on for our tax and tourist dollars. So this property is begging for a change. You can't do both uses, a residential and a business on one lot. It's not permitted. So it's got to be one or the other. It's BA right now. We're asking you to zone the remainder of it BA so something can be done with this. And look at what he's done. Look at what he's been doing. He's building nice things. He's making this town proud. I mean, every butter that was back there for the break now, all their concerns, everything that they were worried about, I haven't heard anything in opposition to that. And in fact, I see a lot of those people walking in and out there now. So I'm asking you to seriously, don't get distracted down the issues that will be addressed at any planning or zoning board meeting for any potential project of development. And look at the limited. BA is a limited. All right, it's not wide open business. There are very restricted uses in there, and a lot of them need relief that are going to go before the board. There's going to be a certified mail sent out to each and every abutter within the radiuses. That's where that takes place. That's where these issues get addressed. Not here before this council. Those things were addressed for years prior to us getting to this point.
Mr. DeLuca had gone through with us at the beginning, but it was at the beginning. It was the fourth one, just the geography of this, so everyone is clear what's changing from R to BA, the exact boundaries of the lot.
Sure. At the present time, right here, if you want to just go back to the regular view, this is all BA over here. This is Ocean Road here, you have Point Chief Road coming here. On Carey's, the new Iggy's is right here. This is an old thing, or no, the cop's the new Iggy's is over here. The old one is right there. The Great Hotel is up above, down there. And this is a perfect area for a limited business. It's perfect. It's got wide open roads. You got parking on the street that people have there. There's plenty of room to mitigate any effects of parking, coverage. This is a nice sized lot. This is something nice could be there. And the area that it's in, if you look at what Iggy's built, you know, I fought that tooth and nail. I have to admit, I did. But it's a beautiful project. It came out nice. The Break Hotel came out nice. That's begging for something just as nice. Not a hotel project per se, but it's something. And that's what we're here for.
And Mr. Jordy, just for the record, the size of this particular lot?
On this one particularly, it is listed as 2 point, let me see, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Well, on the tax assessor's records, it says 0.75 acres. But it's got to be more. The whole piece.
What's the size of the piece we're changing?
Yeah, the BA zone is only 10,000 square feet plus or minus. Or I'm sorry, the residential is 10,000 square feet. But the thing is, you can't do, the zoning ordinance prohibits both a business, a BA use, and a residential. So you build one or the other. But you can't build the residence over in the BA per se, because you're violating that. You can't build the BA over there. So you're taking a piece of property that's in a prime location and you're severely limited.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Okay. Does any member of the public like to testify? Mr. Fleming.
Thanks. Sorry, just from the planning board's perspective, what Mr. Doherty said, it's kind of the relevant point. The other three quadrants are commercial, makes sense. But it's one lot with two zones. You need to do something. The bigger portion of it's commercial. It's a commercial area, those four quadrants. And
Can you mule skin? Because obviously can't do it down there.
No industrial. But I just think from a planning perspective, and And I'm not sure even from a legal perspective, it really makes a lot of sense to have two zones in one lot. So, council needs to do something, okay?
Thank you.
Hello, Terry. So you're telling me that lot, that piece that's plied out right there,
Yep.
could not be rezoned for two residential houses?
Well, I guess you'd have to subdivide the lot. The owner would have to subdivide the lot. Now, I don't know what the outcome would be, but you can't do it, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve or Mike, you can't do it on one existing lot.
I understand, but this is just so that the public understands what's going on here, totally. So you're telling me you can't cut that property in any fashion and rezone that, being that that whole corner going through there is all residential?
Well, it's actually in BA.
So,
Yeah, the outline's a little confused, right?
right, so it's BA, so that can't be rezoned to residential?
I would think you'd want to do the opposite.
Just for the record, Jim, I just want to get on the record that if that is cut down the middle and there were two residential houses put there, could that be done? Yes or no? It's not going to change what I'm going to do.
No.
But no, it
Well,
can't be
because
done.
it's already zoned business.
I understand. Could it be changed to residential?
You would, you can change it, if the council voted, you can change it to anything you
Okay,
want.
so it can be changed to residential. And if it could be changed to residential, that whole corner going back would stay as residential properties. Because when you do drive down there, that's what you see. You see residential properties. I just want to go on the record to let people know that the area there is residential. I understand the BA side of it. I remember the old train on the tracks that used to go down there. And a lot of people wouldn't remember that. But there was an old shack down there and stuff, and there was a little train that ran around.
I would just point out, I don't know how valid this is, but I think in this entire process we went through, the planning board didn't recommend any zone changes that the owners didn't want. People came to us for zone changes which we denied. People north of the Rite Aid lot wanted that commercial. We said no, but I don't think in this process we have taken a lot that the owner wanted a certain designation. We denied that, to any changes to that, but not to flip it to a different zone. That, I mean, I guess Steve's right, you can do whatever you want, but that would be, I think, unprecedented to do that. So it's just an opinion. Steve?
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah, it's normally either the applicant's coming forward and they want their lot changed.
But the question is, the lot has split, it could go one way or the other. That's the basic question is that. It has two different zones.
It could go industrial if you want.
You have
Right, but that's what he's asking, could it go?
Correct. You have to do something. Because you have to do something. We can't keep it split.
It's split, right. Any other members of the public? Mr. Ferrandi.
Stephen Ferrandi, 44 Sylvan Road.
David, you raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you, Council. This seems like an interesting situation of how we got there in the first place, of how we could have a BA zone and an R10, whatever that is here. So was that recently put on? Was that two lots and recently merged within a certain time? Does anybody know the genesis of how it happened that way?
As far as I'm aware, it's always been BA, the zone right here. And generally what happens is instead of having regular lines, when they pass a zoning district, they usually put straight ones if they can. And I think that's what happened now.
My concern also is there's another little caveat in the BA zone, and it was changed actually when the applicant built this hotel, I believe. And that changes the height limit to 40 feet in the BA zone for an inn, specific inn, but you have to have more than 20,000 square feet of property. So I don't know if that BA zone alone is 20,000 square feet. If it isn't, then if you grant this relief, you'll be actually granting a possible in at a higher rate of 40 feet of height. You can see there's residential properties behind it. So every time, you know, there's a zone change, it always kind of, lack of a better word, affects everybody else in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to make the council aware of that, if you'd be rezoning it. Do you know the actual square footage of just the BA zone?
Well, just to address your concern about the thing, that lot above there, that's over 20,000 square feet. You could build it in right there, right now, if you wanted.
Let's try to make a testimony, right, and Christian, I get it.
That's a separate lot, we're just talking about this particular lot.
Yeah, but I mean, if there was anything going to be going in there, it probably would have already gone in on that lot. We control that lot as well. So and again, this is...
That's fine, I just asked if it was 20,000 square feet or not, that's all I asked. I guess I'm not going to get an answer.
What's the size of the lot, Steve?
It's...
What's the size of the lot?
Well, 10,000,
It's a factual.
175 acres.
This is why I always say, though, make statements, not questions.
Yeah, rough estimate, yes, if it's listed as 475 acres, that's 33,000 square feet somewhere in there. So take off the 10, and yeah, you got over 20,000, you got approximately 23,000 square feet in the EA zone right now.
That's including both or just that one particular lot?
No, well, let me address. See the lot, it's that whole thing outlined in yellow? That's one lot. The land that's a little yellowish green to the left, that is a split zone that's residential.
I understand
The
that.
one to the right is BA.
Correct.
The land, that land right in there where the cursor is right now, is approximately 10,000 square feet of area within the residential zone.
Okay.
Off to the right is approximately 23,000 square feet.
Okay, you answered my question, thank you. All right, thank you, Council.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify?
I would just like again to reemphasize the point. If you look at the use table for the BA zone, most of the stuff is special use permit. We've got to go to zoning, and that's where all this stuff gets vetted out. That's where all the abutters have rights. They get to talk about things. There's no specific proposal on the books right now for any of this. Nothing for any of these properties because it's all been up in the air. The map had to get the properties had to get rezoned, so you can't, with any reliability, do any kind of development plans because you don't want to spend the time and money on engineering and whatnot if you don't know what the property is going to be zoned at. But as far as this is concerned, I mean, the council has a role. You pass the ordinance itself. You go ahead and you make your zones, but you don't vet the projects. That's what the charter puts in the zoning board and the planning board. And that's where all this stuff gets ground out. That's where the sausage is made. You pass the overall plan. That's what this is. It's the overall plan. It's not a specific development proposal. And to reach in and to try and direct that right now, I think you're micromanaging something that has been delegated, with all due respect, to the boards. They're given that authority under state law and also under your charter.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
With regard to this law. All right. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And is there a motion regarding Plat L, Lot 282?
I'll make a motion to rezone the lot business or commercial fully.
So to move it from R residential to the BA?
Correct.
Second. Is there a second to that? All right, any discussion on that?
Sure, I'll start. The only concern I had at the last meeting when we discussed this was that possibility of that paper road coming all the way through. from the neighborhood to Point Judith Road. Turns out that is not the case, and it is just the sewer easement. I was concerned with changing the characteristic of the neighborhood and the access to the neighborhood, but since that doesn't exist and it won't happen, I have no other issues with this.
Anyone else? All right, and regarding these properties that have come up, these 6 properties, yes, there was a comp planning process, but the comp planning process dealt with a lot of other issues, and there was a big discussion of many properties that were going to a mixed-use designation, and that was a major part of those conversations. These 6 properties are properties that had a zone change is being suggested to, and they each had some level of 4 of the 6 had some level of controversy. So that's why we're spending more time on these discrete lots. The big debate took place at the comp planning process several years, like 2 or 3 years ago, was on that mixed use. I understand this is a split lot, so is any other comments on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Motion approved 3-2. All right. We now will return to our public comment open forum portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward? Mrs. Ford?
I'd like to say something before we get started. Matt, agenda item 14 for the refit RFP for the library. I'm just curious why you didn't support that.
Nobody made a motion, just on it.
Right.
So
I know, but didn't
it can come back at the next meeting.
Right, but didn't you direct the town engineer to put that RFP out?
Patrick, if someone can bring it back at the next meeting, no one made a motion, so there was no motion on the table.
I know, but you think why would you put it out there and have this guy go through the process?
Because
and we're not motion.
Well, we did, and so,
no, well, I know.
Well, so the motion wasn't made, so it can come back, and I don't know why people didn't. You just saw with the public planning piece, what we just had. Sometimes people they're not sure how they feel about changing a zone. There's a lot of mixed, feelings about how they want to go forward with something, and so nobody happened to make the motion. If a motion's not made and there's no second,
I know, but I'm just curious.
So
cobbled
you're
together
curious, so we're going to know your curiosity. Thank you.
And then you put it out there. You don't support it, or you don't.
I still support nobody. That's Robert's Rules of Order. So, do you have a public comment? Do you have a statement? This is not a question and answer session.
Well, okay. Well, then I'll make a statement. I'll make a statement.
Go ahead.
I think the reason you and your crew here didn't support it is so you can run to the Providence Journal and tell them, well, we tried to fix the library, but nobody supported it. So I think that's what the ulterior motive is.
Thank you.
As again, take another hit on the library.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone else? Yes, Mrs. Ford. Try not to impute motives to people that they don't have.
Well, I've been sitting next to you for 4 years. I pretty much got involved.
Okay, my name is Carol Fortin, 10 Cross Road. Mr. Mannix, at the last town council meeting, you had a constituent removed for inappropriate remarks. Equally offensive was the remark regarding disabled patrons using our library. Because we have a population who are confined to wheelchairs and other disabilities and need a handicap bus to access the library, it was highly inappropriate to say that these patrons are using the library as a daycare center. As a former special ed teacher, you can go back and look at the tape. And as an assistant special ed director, I think we need to be way more sensitive about that. I feel you were inconsistent in not noticing how offensive this remark was, as you were with the first remark. And it was inappropriate, so I'm surely not calling you on not having called that out. Please be consistent and respectful to all inappropriate comments and how you handle individuals who may have crossed a line, whether you agree with them or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
As
you know, I don't speak very often.
Name and address.
Patricia Mannix, 111 Colonel John Gardner Road. I spoke last time and I want to speak again. The politics of personal destruction regarding the library issue has got to stop. I bring this up because of what happened at the last town council meeting. Mr. Brady got up during open forum and criticized the tactics of some of the library supporters. That is his right in a democracy. I know Pat Brady very well. I know his wife, I know his family. He's a very good man. He's come to council meetings since 2012 when I was attending. He usually has a prepared statement that he reads, whatever the issue is, and there's never been a problem. After he spoke, Rosalind Sinclair got up, and as he finished speaking, she accused Mr. Brady of drinking and having liquor on his breath. The reason I mention this is the chilling effect a personal attack like that has on other speakers who feel the same way he does. Do they want to be personally attacked and ridiculed? No. So, they don't speak at meetings, and many others don't even come to the meetings. But what they did do in November 2018, they voted. These personal attacks are about much more than the library. They are so personal and hate-filled that the ultimate goal is to get one or more of the duly elected council members to resign. The Belmont 4 supporters lost the election, but they still want to win and will do it any way they can. The personal attacks against Matt, Jill, and Ricky and their families is way out of bounds. I'm directing these final comments to the viewers at home. If you agree with them and you see them somewhere, go up to them, tell them you support them, and shake their hand. I know many of you already do that. My last comment is directed at Matt, Jill, and Ricky. You are doing what you believe is in the best interest of our town. And I want the three of you to know that many of us are pulling for you, praying for you. Hang in there. Be strong.
Yes.
Nancy Mucho, 8 Vanderbilt Drive. I'm going to read an op-ed that was in the Providence Journal on June 9th, written by Betty Cotter. A couple of weeks ago, I gave a program at Narragansett Public Library, also known as Maury Lujan's Memorial Library. Yes, that library, the one that has made statewide news recently as 3 members of the town council tried to dismantle a voter mandate to buy an adjacent building and renovate it into a new library. My topic was South County Hospital, but I could not start without acknowledging the fierce battle going on over an institution just as important, the free public library, which provides access to books, CDs, DVDs, computer resources, including Wi-Fi and Ancestry.com, and programs like the one I had been invited to give. For months I have followed the Narragansett saga with more than detached interest. As a writer, a lifelong lover of libraries, and the former president of the South Kingstown Library Board of Trustees, I have felt increasing dismay over 3 town council members' bitter attitude toward their own library. To sum it up, these councilors believe the plans, which already were approved by a majority in a referendum, are too costly and elaborate, and they must swoop in and save the town from making a costly mistake. No amount of public pressure has swayed these individuals, whose attitude seems to be that their opponents are emotional while they are rational. One comment was particularly telling. Council President Matthew Mannix, in a prepared statement, said recently that the Library Board of Trustees, quote, have gone rogue, pushing for a Taj Mahal building rather than a traditional neighborhood library, unquote. How could a board be, quote, going rogue if 67.9% of voters have approved his plans? But more telling, I think, is his Taj Mahal comment. The reference to India's Grand Mausoleum, a symbol of extravagance, is typical political rhetoric. He assumes no one would support such a thing. Yet there was a time when civic buildings stood for something. Consider the granite building in South Kingstown. Its library, Hazard Memorial Hall, and Town Hall are imposing structures meant to last. Or Westerly Public Library, a triumph of yellow brick constructed in 1894 that's still a jewel of that downtown. Of course, the irony is that the towers, which Narragansett proudly displays on its website, police uniforms and street banners, would be a Taj Mahal under Maddox's definition. And what of this traditional neighborhood building that he valorizes? Well, the town already has one of those too, its present library, a small wooden structure constructed in the early 1960s, cramped and inaccessible to the handicapped. It has not stood the test of time. It's not 1960 anymore. The residents of Narragansett don't want a bungalow with a few books on the shelves. Libraries have become community gathering places where people not only do research and check out materials, but use 3D printers, log onto computers, and attend a range of programs from book clubs to movies and lectures. When I was on the South Kingstown Library Board, I fretted about competition.
Nancy, you're over the time.
Okay.
We read it. We read it.
Susan Amaruso, 111 West Bay Drive. I am back again after an absence because of illness, but I did watch the proceedings on TV, and I thought how horrible that this is continuing over the library. I don't get this. A couple of people ago talking about the three of you representing this majority. Well, 33% voted against getting a new library. That is not a majority. It's not even close. It wasn't like 49, 51. So how do you think you are advocating for this silent majority? The people who voted were not the majority, they were the minority. And this whole situation, because it involves a library that was the second most top-getting bond issue in the past 20 years in Narragansett, has gone beyond the state now. I was contacted by a national publication to get my take as a random person. I told them, I said, I'm not connected, I don't know all the ins and outs, but they wanted to know, like, how? Like, how is this that the bond issue passed? How is it that, you know, this whole thing, it's been 10 years in the making. They knew that much. This has been not just a random choice, you know, and I said this thing about Gilbane and how, I mean, at some point you have to let that go. It's over and done with. We own the building. Almost 68% of us said we want a new library. We don't want a remake. We don't want second floors that aren't accessible to the handicapped. We want what we voted for. And we are persistent, and we will persist, and we will resist. And, you know, you may think you're getting attacked. You might be getting ignored. But I've never seen any demonstration of anyone being horrible to any one of the three of you. I see you and I just can't talk to you. But I'm certainly not going to attack you. And Ms. Lawler and Mr. Lima, you still have not learned that you're supposed to respond when a constituent that you represent, even if you don't agree with that person, you're supposed to let them know that you received the email. That's the polite thing to do. That's the democratic thing to do. Mr. Mannix, you did answer me. And then one thing I told you, we disagree, and my father did have this saying. He said, you can be sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. I mean, you do represent people. that don't want to spend money. And some of those people, they don't want a library, they don't want new roads, they don't want sidewalks, they don't want their tax dollars to go for anything. But then there were some people that didn't want a library. And I just had I couldn't tell this person who contacted me. I can't make any sense of it. So it's gone beyond Rhode Island. Now it's getting some national attention. I don't know where that's gonna go, but it's dismaying that I'm talking about my town to somebody, and it's so negative, and I can't come up with a reason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Karen.
Karen Chepshow at 63 Woman Street. When I was little, and that was a long time ago, and when my children were little, they used to play house and they used to play school. I somehow feel that the three of you are playing at government. This couldn't be the real thing, because you're not representing this town in a very favorable manner. There were children in the audience the last time, and it was really embarrassing, Mr. Mannix. You're yelling at the audience, saying we're all acting like 3-year-olds. Well, it is to be pointed out that none of you have children, and I wouldn't talk to my own children that way, and you're talking to adults that way in front of other children. What kind of civic responsibility are you demonstrating? It wasn't only the vote, it was the request to move open forum to the beginning that you suppressed. I noticed you allowed lawyers to go on and on talking about a land variance, but yet you cut off public comment and there was no public comment on the budget. And I need to point out again that who was the top vote getter? Jesse Pugh. Who was the second largest vote getter? Patrick Murray. And yet the three of you have taken over with your strong arm tactics. And it's embarrassing for this whole town. The whole state is like, what is going on in Narragansett? So I don't know what point you're trying to prove, except power and politics is obviously more important to you than the welfare of this town, and I find it really distasteful. We did lose our children's librarian that was very attached to a lot of the children in town. Yeah, you can look away, Mr. Mannix, but I noticed you were paying a lot of attention to the lawyer when he was speaking before about zoning changes, but you don't want to hear about the library. It's shameful, because the library represents democracy. And I look at you as 3 monarchs that don't really represent democracy in a very positive way. And it is disgusting. And it is, you were calling the audience names in front of children who were there supporting a library. What kind of demonstration is that? If you had any good ethics at all, you would all step down and allow new people to come up there and allow Jesse to be the chair and Patrick to be the president pro tem, because that is what the election really was about. And it's only increased the importance of the library to this community. But you're blowing it off, just like you do anything that isn't going to bring particular power, and I don't know, I think it's bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. I think the 3 of you are bizarre. To sit up there
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very kind.
I can't thank you. Yeah, you want to take a book out on being good manners, Mr. Mannix. Why don't you go into the children's section and take a book out on ethics and manners?
Thank you, Karen.
Because I don't think you have either.
Thank you, Karen. Yes.
Richard
Zercher, 25 Marion Avenue, Narragansett. For the record, I do own a fire truck. 67.7% of the vote keeps getting brought up. The last time I spoke, I asked the question, was the Belmont building on the ballot? The answer is no. Many people go into an election and they walk into the ballot booth and they take a look at what's on there for bonds, and a lot of times they don't read ahead of time what it actually is. So many people, when they go in and see, wow, library, great idea. And everyone here supports a library. I support a library. I've said it many times. I'm friendly with everyone on the council. I've spoken to many of you about this, and I've also spoken to Pat specifically, just for the record. So, many people that voted for the library issue didn't know what building they were voting for, because that wasn't actually specifically in the bond verbiage. So I would like someone please to correct the record and just get it out there. Secondly, this whole level funding for 5 years, or the past 5 years, apparently the library was overfunded for the last 5 years, because they must have overstated their need, and if they didn't, please just someone correct me. I really would like maybe the finance director to put a report together of all the money that went to the library, how it got there, and what was done with it. How did they come up with $670,000 of a surplus when they have an $800,000 budget? You don't want the fire department with a $5 million budget have a $4 million surplus. That doesn't happen. So I think some corrections just need to be made, put it all out there on the record for everyone to see, and maybe we'll clear up all of this. There are many personal attacks that go back and forth here, and I've seen them on the social media, and I've seen them on TV, and now I'm here again tonight and I see it again. And I'll say it again for the record. I'm a younger person than a lot of people in this audience, and I'm like shocked by what they have to say, on and off the record. So I think some little more nicety could be done here. Put the records out there for everyone to see, put the reports out, where we get the funding, where'd the money go, what was it really appropriated properly, and was it saved properly, and let's just move on. Build a new library, but just build the right one in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else, just a couple of things. The first July meeting, we are not having a first July meeting, so we'll be back here on July 15th. And just for scheduling purposes, I wanted to announce that. And I meant to say at the beginning of the meeting, I want to congratulate the Rowley family on Brendan Rowley's ordination as a priest. He's one of the first Roman Catholic priests from our town, so I thought that was a great accomplishment and wanted to recognize that. A motion to retire to executive session of the Town Council in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 42-46-5, subsection A, collective bargaining, police, IBPO, local 303 labor contracts in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, subsection A2, and real estate acquisition or lease of real property, former Belmont property for public purposes, or of the disposition of publicly held property in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, subsection A5.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Lima, start the roll call.
Joe Lima, aye.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Jesse Pugh, no.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Open minute.